Glenn, we're live.
We're live, baby. I just shared us out. 5 p.m.
Thank you.
5
man.
p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. How does that happen? Answer, we have a life that we want to honor. We have our friend Catherine, who is 98 years old. And we think that's worth focusing some attention on. She's got some stories in her. She's got some thoughts, some ideas, and I'm sure some opinions along the way. And if everyone will put your hands together, we know she'll hear it on some level. We're going to welcome Catherine to the show. Catherine, you're allowed to applaud for yourself, darling. You've earned it.
Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start from birth. That seems like it would be an appropriate place to start. Can you share with us a couple of things? First of all, where were you born and raised? And then I know what the audience is going to want to know most is they're going to want to know some helpful hints, possibly even some of Catherine's secrets as to what has allowed life to look like it has looked for 98 years. Where were you born, dear?
Where were you born?
I was born in Lewisham, which is a suburb of London. It's in the southeast London. And I was born at home because my mother had all of her children born at home.
Oh, nice. I thought you were going to tell us. Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say, how many siblings did you have? Or do
I
you
have 3 sisters.
Wow.
My mother, God rest her, lost her first baby. It was a girl. She lost her second child. That was a boy. And along came me. I think I was the blight of their life. But I made it. And I made it pretty long.
I guess so.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say, I was born at home because I wanted. I thought you were going to say, I was born at home because I wanted to be near my mother.
No, well, at the time, I didn't know that.
And you said you spent some time in Ireland?
Yes, my father was Irish. And so we would go back to Ireland every so often, especially when his mother was still alive. And he's still got family in Ireland. I've got 2 cousins that I'm quite close to in Ireland, and 2 or 3 that I haven't seen since I was a child.
Wow.
So you went to grade school? You went to grade school in the UK?
I went to grade school in Lewisham. Catholic school. Was very strict. Some days you were only allowed to breathe on Wednesdays.
Did the nuns ever pop you in the butt with a yardstick?
No, we only had we had civilian teachers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I later taught in a Catholic school where I was the only lay teacher. Everybody in there, everyone else was a nun. But the school that I went to, we did not have nuns.
And did you do that right out of university, or when did you begin teaching at the school?
No, I taught school. I started actually during the summer after school got out, before university started.
Wow. So how much time did you spend in Ireland?
Well, I can't really say because it was me like a week here and 10 days later. It was broken. It was never any real length of time because my parents were in business in London. So they had to be there for that.
Okay. What kind of a business were they in?
They were in the and fruit and salad business, like things that you use to make salads and fruit. My mother's nickname was Tomato Kate because she used to do the buying, and they always said that she could pick the best tomatoes in the world.
When you were a little girl, how much was a loaf of bread? You remember?
Not really. I'd take a guess at it and say it was about tuppence, 2 pennies.
2 pennies, right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And see, during the war, everything was so rationed. And the cost wasn't that they kept the cost down as well as rationing how much you could get. Bread was not rationed very, very hard. Could buy a fresh loaf of bread every day, sometimes 2. But it was things like sugar. We got 2 ounces per adult and 1 ounce per child in a household. No eggs for anyone over 5 years old.
Wow.
2 ounces of tea, and tea is the national beverage. Can you imagine what had happened in this country if they were rationed to 2 ounces of coffee a week?
Oh my goodness gracious! And
A week?
What would life be minus tea and crumpets?
2 ounces of tea a week.
Jeez.
But my mom, God rest her soul, knew everybody that knew everybody, and so she got a lot of stuff for us off the black market.
Wow.
I've always believed that life is best with both tea and crumpets.
You're probably right.
You've got to have crumpets.
I know. Unfortunately, crumpets have been gone. They didn't even have crumpets when the war came. They had pretty much faded in popularity, I suppose. They had English muffins, but crumpets. I don't know why crumpets disappeared. I think the generation coming up weren't very fond of them. The texture was very different, and a lot of people didn't like them.
So, Catherine, let me ask you: when you were a teenager, dear, what were some of your dreams for your own?
Well, when I was a teenager, war was declared when I was 17 years old. So my dreams were the bloody war end so we can get to a normal life and I can do what I want to do with my life.
Which was what?
Well, I thought about several things, but I wound up going to teaching. And then I also went and took courses in theater arts. So I taught theater arts and English mostly.
Wow. So was that your dream though, as a teenager?
As a teenager?
Yeah.
Just to survive the war.
Was it? Yeah.
And hope that we didn't get a bomb hit the house.
Yeah.
But we had something just as bad. One morning, my parents used to sleep in an underground air raid shelter. But the beginning of the war turned me off of that. So I used to stay home at night, and they would go to this big air raid shelter, and I would make a pot of tea for them, take a flask of tea and some sandwiches if we had anything to make a sandwich with. and then I would take it over to them. And one morning, they came back from the air raid shelter at 6 o'clock. And although I was at home, I didn't sleep too well. Particularly the first year was too damn hard to sleep because of the bombing and the noise. But anyway, they came home one morning and they lived upstairs. Their bedroom was upstairs. And they just got into bed. And the windows across the front of their room, they had 5 windows. And it was a very large room. And the windows opened, and all these air raid wardens and a couple of policemen climbed in and said, "Mr. Mack, you've got to get out." My daddy, with his sense of humor, said, "What the hell do you mean get out? I've only just got in." And of course, I laughed. I thought it was funny. But to make a long story short, there was a bomb under one of the houses on the street. And they had gone through every house and not found it. And our house and 2 more they hadn't got into. So we had nothing to say or do. They told us, "You need to leave." Well, everybody else on the street left, but we didn't have anywhere to go because my dad's family were in Ireland. You can't pack up and go to Ireland, in 5 minutes.
Right.
So anyway, my dad said, "Put the kettle on and let's make a cup of tea and let's think about it." My mother said, "You do what you like. I'm going back to the shelter." And she went back to the air raid shelter. And her last words were, "Bring me a cup of tea." So my dad put the kettle on and we sat and we're kind of talking and wondering what we should do or if we should do. And after a little while, one of the air raid wardens came in and he said, "You're supposed to be out of here." I said, my dad said, "Yes, I know, but we don't have anywhere to go." So they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" So my dad said, "We're going to stay here a while and play it by ear." And he had an Irish accent, by the way. It gets full of water. And anyway, they left, and we stayed there. Dad put the kettle on, made a cup of tea. My mum's last words as she ran out across the street, "He'd bring me a cup of tea." Speaking about that, that was a main road that my mother used to run across to get to the air raid shelter. And my daddy said to me one day, "You know what? Your mother is never going to get hit by a bomb. She's going to get hit by a bus running across the main road." And he had a great sense of humor. Anyway, he and I stayed in the house. And after about an hour or two, a lorry pulled up behind the house and came through the front door, and there were 4 British soldiers and a lieutenant. And they said, "Why aren't you out?" And they said, "Well, we've no place to go except to go to the air raid shelter. And I'm claustrophobic, and I'm more so now than I was then, but I couldn't go down the shelter. I hated." And anyway, they said, "Well, we've got to look for the bomb." And my dad said, "Okay." They said, "How about a cup of tea?" And my dad said, "Oh, okay." He told me, "Katie, put the kettle on." So we made them a cup of tea, and they sat, they had a cup of tea, and they talked about this, they talked about that. And they had a second cup of tea, and they're still talking, what have you. And finally, my dad came out. We were in the back door by the kitchen. my dad came out and said, "Are you guys here to find this bomb, or are you here to chat me daughter up?" And he, and
Are you
this,
here?
the lieutenant was there at that time. The lieutenant said, "Yeah, I guess we better get on with it." So he said to the boys, "I'm leaving. I'll be back later. Good luck." So off he went, and they went down to the back of the yard, and we were over a shop. The house was over a shop. So anyway, they go down to the cellar, and they seem like they've gone a long time. And finally, they come up, and two of them are carrying the bomb. It was under our house.
Oh, wow.
And it was a 510-pound time bomb. And had it not been found, I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here telling the story. So and then we waited for the bomb squad to come. So the guys, the lieutenant leaves. The other four said, one said, "Let's put the kettle on again." And my dad said, "All right." And he went back into the house to read the newspaper. And we had to boil the kettle outside because we had no gas. We had gas if we went for our heat. The gas was got out, so that happened all the time. So we bought what they called a primer stove, and it was about 2 feet high, and it burned methylene spirits, and you had to pump it, and then you put a match to it, and you get one burner. So anyway, they decided to make more tea. And they're sitting there, chit-chatting about everything in his belly. And my dad finally came out and said, in his Irish brogue, "Are you chaps here to find this bloody bomb, or are you here to chat me daughter up?" With that, they decided they'd better get to it. So they had called the bomb squad, and he arrived about that time. So they went down to the cellar, and they were gone a good while. And when they came back, they said, "I want you all stay right where you are, or you can leave, but we're going down to bring the bomb up." And then another guy walked in, and he was the bomb diffuser. So they brought this bomb up into the backyard, laid it down on the grass. And about that time, the diffuser man arrived. So I looked at the bomb. I didn't want to go close to it, but I could see it very clearly.
That's
and they
probably a
described what
really
it
good
was.
choice, Catherine. That's probably a really good choice not to go close to it.
Anyway, I said to them, what would happen if you don't get this diffused? And he turned to me and he says, "Sweetheart, if I can't diffuse this bomb, you won't know and you won't care."
Wow.
Right.
So he went on. We sat across the other side of the yard, but thank God he did get it diffused.
And how old were you when all this happened?
I was 18.
Okay. So the soldiers were there to chat you up.
So I have to ask you a question, dear.
Yes.
Since Ken and I don't, at the moment at least, have any bombs to look for, would you mind if we just chat you up?
Well, I don't know. That's a great compliment to be as old as I am.
Listen,
be asked that.
If you're 98 and you still got a couple of dudes that want to chat you up, you're doing okay.
Thank you.
So what brought you from the UK to the United States? And when you got to the States, what was your point of entry? Where did you first set up shop? Did you come
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. Yes.
Because
Well,
I can't figure out how you wound up in Texas.
okay. Well, I was, after I got through university and what have you, I got a job with the British Admiralty, and it was with the officer in charge of armament supply, and it was in the Royal Albert Dock in London. It took me an hour and a half to get from my house to my job, sometimes 2 hours. It was miserable, that part of it. My mission complemented an American mission, and they complemented us. In other words, they did the same thing that we did. They supplied guns, ammunition, weapons parts, and repairs. We did the same thing, and we did it on all the weapons that we used. The everything that the Ally used, we both handled. And I had a ship that came in and wanted something, and I know exactly what it was. Anyway, we had a nomenclature for all the weapons because we had weapons made by the United States, weapons made by Canada. But just like that, there were a lot of countries, contributing. So I had to know the different marks of each of the types of ammunition or gun parts or the weapon itself. I had to know which were interchangeable. And one morning the phone rang, and oh no, that's not true. One morning, I was getting too much head. One morning about 11 o'clock, the lieutenant that worked with me, and my maiden name was MacGale, and his name was Gale. So the two of Gales, we handled that. Anyway, he came to my desk and he said, Katie, there's an American sailor out here looking for you. And I said, what do you mean, an American sailor? I said, are you having me on? He said, no. He said, he's parked right out the door. So I got up from my desk and I was very busy and I was annoyed that I was interrupted. So I walk out.
Katie, men can be annoying. I just want to remind you that men can be annoying.
Anyway, there was this big lorry, and I'd never like the lieutenant. That was a vehicle I'd never seen before. So I woke out, and here's this American sailor. He was 6'2", and I'm 5 feet tall, and he's leaning up against the front of the truck with his little white cap tilted over one eye and smoking a cigarette. And I walked out, and as he saw me come out, he threw the cigarette down and stubbed it. And I said, are you looking for me? And he looked at me and he said, yes, I think I really am. Or something silly like that. So I said, what is it you need? And he said, well, I brought you both as ammunition and gun sight. So the first thing that went through my head is, why is he over here at the office instead of being over at the ammo dump? So I said to him, well, take it over there to Dan and he'll unload you. So he said, okay. So he left. Well, he left to go to the ammo. I went back to work. The next day, the phone rang and somebody said, Kate, it's for you. I get to the phone and he said, this is a Deptford Depot. And I said, yes. He said, do you have, and he gave me some ridiculous something. And I said, have you got the right nomenclature? I said, it doesn't make sense to me what you're saying. And he said, oh, well, while I've got you on the phone, would you go out with me? And I said, go out with you? I don't even know you. He said, well, you can get to know me. And I said, and I'm looking for excuses. So I said, but I live in Lewisham. I said, you're way over in Deptford. He said, oh, I know where Lewisham is. So I said, oh, how did you know that? He said, well, you know, you had that rocket hit the town last week. And I said, yes. He said, I came over and help get people out and help people that couldn't get out of the shops. And I'm thinking, my God, he may have helped my mom and dad. So I felt I owe him something. So I said, all right, I'll go up. I said, I'll meet you at the clock tower since you know where it is. So anyway, to make a long story short, I went to meet him. The girls in the next office said to me, what are you going to do? How are you going to get out of it? I said, well, I tried a couple of things. They didn't work. So I'm going to go look him over. And that's all I know to do. If I don't like his looks, I'll just get back on the bus and go home. So anyway, I went down and I got off the road way over here, and he's underneath the clock and he's walking up and down. So I thought, well, I mean, he looks safe enough, but I noticed he was very tall. I had forgotten he was very tall when he came to the office. So anyway, I said, okay, I'll go out with you. He said, well, I'll meet you at the clock tower tonight. I said, okay, what time? And he told me. So I'm still apprehensive about this. So I take the bus, and he's way across the road at the center of the town. So I got off the bus way as far away from him as I could. And I stood there and I looked at him. And I thought, well, he looks harmless, but, you know, I don't know. And finally, I said, I better get this over with. So I walked across the street, and he said, I was afraid you wouldn't come. And I said, well, I was probably hoping that you weren't coming. So he looked at me and he laughed. He said, well, that wasn't very nice. And I laughed. So he said, look, I came with one of my buddies. He's got a girl that he dates over in Catford, which was within walking distance. And he said, I told him that we'd meet them over there. So I said, fine. So we walk. We don't have too much to say. He asked me a couple of questions about the buildings or something. So we get over there. And the girl that this boy was dating, she just looking at her turned me off. And then she opened her mouth, and she didn't. Have they left?
We're here.
We're here.
Anyway,
You are captivating, dear.
Yeah,
We've got people that want to ask you questions too.
I know you do. Okay.
So did you wind up falling in love?
Make a long story short. This I didn't like this girl. She obviously didn't. I don't think she liked anybody. But anyway, finally they leave. So Bill, his name was Bill. I learned that much, and then it really wasn't Bill. Anyway, we walked home to Lewisham and up to where I lived. We walked through the park. and we used to feed the ducks. And finally I said, I've got to get up in the morning to work. I need to go home. So he walked me to the house, and I said, you know what? You should have stayed in Lewisham, because now you've got to walk to Lewisham and then get to Deptford. I don't think there are any buses after a certain time. He said, don't worry about it, I'll be all right. He said, can I see you tomorrow night? And I thought, well, I haven't seen much of him tonight, so I guess it's all right. So I agreed to. Then the third night he came, and I told him, I said, we've seen everything there is to see in Lewisham. I said, I really don't know what else to do. So I said, I've got one thing on the plate, and that's all. I said, we could walk up to Lee, to the pub, and have a drink with my mum and dad. And he said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. So I thought, well, all right, here goes. So my courting took place in that pub in Lee with my mother and dad. And we married 3 months later.
Wow.
And we stayed married for 63 years.
Wow.
That's
No, it was 63 years, 1944.
So I want to make sure I understand the moral of the story. The moral of the story sounds like courting should be supervised by parents and should include alcohol.
Well, I used to do, all I drank in those days was sherry or shandy. Shandy, you don't know what that is. Shandy is about that much beer in a beer glass filled with lemonade.
Mm.
That's shandy, and that's what most teenagers start drinking.
Wow. Wow.
That's a
What a
long
story.
time to be together with someone. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful
Yes.
story. So how did you wind up in Texas? I know that it's said that eventually all smart people wind up here.
But I didn't know. Well, he stayed. Oh, yes, I got pregnant I guess the night that he put his shoes under my feet, my bed, I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they put me on a ship. What was annoying to me at the time, I thought that I would come to the United States with him. Instead of that, we got married December the 20th, and he walked in the house the 1st of April and said, you need to start getting ready to go home, to go to the States. I said, why? He said, because they've already got you booked. It was April. He said, we've got you booked for 2 weeks from now. And I thought, Lord, that wasn't what I wanted. But anyway, so okay, so they put me on a hospital ship. And there were not a lot of war brides on the ship. And I learned later that my experience was wonderful, and because some of the war brides they had to wait like a year before they were shipped over, and then they were shunted around and put in hotels. And I've had 2 or 3 tell me that
Wow.
their entry was not happy. Anyway, I get to New York and on a hospital ship. I had a funny thing happen to me there. It's taken up time. I got sick and I was pregnant. So they were very concerned. I just felt really bad. So they put me in the ship's hospital. The ship's hospital, the doctor was from New York. And he walked in and he said to me, "I've seen you before." And I said, "Not really." And he laughed. He says, "No." He said, "You remind me of my wife when we first met." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "When I walked across the ward," he said, "I was actually in shock." He said, "Because he just hit me how much you look like her." And I said, "Well, the result of that, I got everything taken care of. He spoiled me. He had the chefs make special meals for me and came out to the deck to tell me goodbye. And we pulled in. He wouldn't let me go back on the ship, back on the regular course. He kept me in the hospital.
So it seems like we have a running theme here that wherever you go, men stop to chat you up. Now, I want to go back.
Say that.
Kate, before we get, by the way, do you prefer people calling you Catherine, Kate, or Katie? What do you like?
Well, most people that I work with call me Kate. I don't mind. I mean, I think Catherine sounds very formal.
What would you like tonight? Would you like formal or informal?
Informal.
Okay, then I will call you Kate as well, because after all, we've been working together now for about 38 minutes. So I want to make sure that you've been informed properly by your daughter. You mentioned that if a man puts his shoes under your bed, that
No, I said that. Well, go ahead with what you're asking me.
You somehow went from that to pregnancy. And I'm wondering if you were informed that this is a sex education program. Ken and I do a sex education program every Thursday evening, and we're really glad to have you as our guest. And you have shed some light on this that we've not heard from many of our guests previously.
And hey, Brad Leland is he's hitting on her.
We have a TV star named
TV
Brad
star
who is chatting you up.
Okay.
Yeah. He's chatting.
Well, I've
up.
been chatted up a few times in my life.
So how did you wind up getting from New York, Kate, to Texas?
Oh, from New York I went from New York to Alabama.
Oh.
My husband was from Alabama, and they had a farm. They were farmers, and that's another culture shock. I arrived. I arrived about 1:30. Well, I didn't. Arrived in New York. The Red Cross met us, saw that we had food and that our baggage was all there, helped us to get through customs. And then myself and another girl got on the same train for New York, but she got off at the first stop. Anyway, I arrived in Alabama at a little town called Greenville, and it was just a little farm town. And it was about 1:30 in the morning, and the train pulls up, and there's no station. And I thought, where in the world is the station? So the porter, a black man, put my bag out for me. And I said to him, "Where's the railroad station?" Oh, he said, "We don't really have a station." He said, "This is just a country town. The station, what is the station, is where that light is. Can you see that light down there?" And I said, "Yes."
Gosh.
He said, "Go ahead and just walk towards it." He said, "Isn't somebody meeting you?" I said, well, that's a good question because I don't know. And I don't think the man could understand me because my accent was very heavy in those days. And so I picked up my bag and the train pulls off and I'm standing and looking. There's railroad tracks everywhere and no station except this one little light. So I start walking towards the light and I see a male figure walking towards me. And I didn't know whether to turn and run the other way or just hit him with my handbag or what to do. So anyway, I kept walking. And then out of the night, he spoke and said, "Are you Mrs. Catherine Reynolds?" And I said, "Yes." And it was my husband's sister's husband. That was my husband's brother-in-law. And he introduced himself and took my bag. And he said, "I'm sorry, I'm late." But it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And we walked to the car and he talks to me. And we start off to Louvain, and I thought it was going to be just down the street. And it was an hour's drive to their house. And I arrived there, and Bill's sister, who is a nurse, welcomed me and said, "It's late, you need to go to bed.
We're still here.
I'll talk to you in the morning." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "I'd like to brush my teeth." She showed me where the bathroom was. So the next morning was very unpleasant. She told me to take my gown off so she could examine me. She was an RN nurse. She was an obstetric nurse. So the next words out of her mouth was, I was shocked. I said, "Why?" And she said, "But you don't look like you're pregnant." And I said, "Well, my doctor and the Navy doctor can't be wrong. Two of them can't be wrong." And anyway, she said, "Well, I'm going to take you to the doctor this afternoon, to my doctor, the obstetric man, and let him decide." So he said, "Yes, she's pregnant." He said, "But she's very small." And because Bill's sister was pretty heavy, but she accepted his word for it. So the next day, she didn't call me to get me up. I got up when I woke up. And she said, "I'm going back to work tomorrow, and you're going to have to take care of Sarah," which was her 3-year-old, who was the worst behaved child I'd ever seen in my life. Because children that I grew up, friends of my mother's or whatever, had kids like that, they were just sweet and cute, and I mean, you had some who was a bit rowdy, but none of them. But anyway, this one decided she didn't like me well. So May goes to work the next day, and the first thing I asked Sarah, the child, to pick up something she'd left in the middle of the floor. And she told me, "No," stamped her feet and said, "I don't have to." And that was her behavior for the rest of the time I was there. So that was welcome to Alabama. And then I needed some writing paper. and envelopes. So your sister took me into Montgomery and said, there's a dime store, which was Woolworths. And she said, you can get stationery there. So I go in and I'm looking around the store, and this one girl, one of the apartments, counters, kept looking at me and looking at me. And every time I turned around, no matter where I was standing in the store, I could see her looking at me. So finally I stopped and she said, can I help you? And I said, yes, please. I would like some envelopes and stationery. And she looked at me and I thought, she can't understand me. I don't know what. So finally I thought, writing. So I said, writing paper. Oh, she said, around here. And she's still looking at me. So I find envelopes and I find writing paper. And I hand them to her. And she's talking to me and she said, you're not from here, are you? And I said, no, I'm not. And she said, where are you? Well, she said, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from England. Well, first of all, she said, oh, I think it's wonderful that you traveled or something like that. And then she asked me how long I'd been here. And I said, 4 months. And she said, 4 months. She said, where are you from? And I said, England. She said, my Lord, you must be so smart. And I said, why? She said, you've learned our language so quickly. So welcome to the United States.
Well, all you really needed to learn
Pardon?
was how to stomp your feet and say no. They still use that in Alabama today.
Oh, wow.
Well, his family, some of his family, in fact, that little girl is now a grown woman with children of her own, and she still lives there, just down the street from where she lived when this happened.
Do you know the best thing to ever come out of Alabama? Do you know what it was?
Yes, I know you're talking.
Can you hear me?
The best thing to come out of Alabama is Interstate 20 West.
Yeah. Well, I think my husband came out pretty damn good. But the thing is, he went in the Navy, British Navy, American Navy, when he was 17. His father had to sign him in, and he was everywhere. I mean, he traveled, and he was at the Battle of Midway. He was at the Battle of, what's the big battle? Yeah, he was at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. And he was in the Battle of Midway. And he lost his Alabama accent, and he told me why. He said when he first got in the Navy, they were stationed in San Francisco, and he and some buddies were walking, and a convertible car pulled up beside them. There were 4 girls in there, and they were talking to them. And when he opened his mouth, one of these girls made fun of his accent. And he said he went back to the ship determined that he would lose that accent. It was the last thing he did. And when I met him, I didn't recognize the accent as being Southern, because I'd met lots of Southern guys. And and he said that he was so conscious of that he determined that he would lose that Southern accent.
Wow.
That's not easy to do.
No, I know, but I didn't know he was a Southerner until he told me that story.
Right. Just like you right now. Imagine how tough it would be for you to lose your Texas accent. I mean, it's so thick, Kate.
Kate, did you listen? Somebody wants to know if you listened to the Andrews sisters.
Oh, when I was young, yes, when they were popular.
Yeah. Wow. So when did you how did you end up moving from Alabama to Texas?
Well, he got discharged out of the Navy very soon, and the property was in Alabama, was of course on a farm, and they had a very nice home there, but they'd run out of money before they could hook up the electricity. So at that time, we didn't have any electricity.
Wow.
What was I going to say?
How you got?
Oh, anyway, Bill got out of the Navy, and we had to go to Montgomery so he could find work. There's no work out in the country. And he went to work for the National Guard. Actually, he went to work for the State Military Department, and the National Guard is part of the military department. And he'd been there some time when the Korean War broke out. And he immediately got notice from the Navy that he had critical MOS and was subject to recall. And by now we had a child, and we sat down and talked about it. And he said, the Navy is not a good place for a married man. So he said, the 31st Dixie Division was being activated, and his boss was the commanding officer of that division. And anyway, Bill went and talked to him, and he said, yes, I'd love to have you. And he said, I'll give you permanent master sergeant rank if you'll come with us. And so that's what he did. And that's how we got out of Alabama.
Wow.
Yes.
And did you go from there to San
We
Marcos,
were
Texas?
stationed in California, Fort Bliss, White Sands, New Mexico.
I have
We
been.
got moved
White
out.
Sands.
But we used to meet soldiers. Well, he would tell me about, see this guy over here, you know. We met GIs. We met GIs that had never left their home base. And they'd been in 10, 15 years.
Wow.
And we really got we didn't mind it. He didn't either. But we were reassigned almost immediately. We got assigned to France and assigned to Germany. And that's something, we never ever met another GI that had been assigned to both of those countries. But it may have been what he does. He was in charge of all the secret documents and stuff like that. And if a base was closing down, it was his responsibility to see that all of that stuff was secure.
So did you go from White Sands, New Mexico? Did you go from there to Texas?
No, we went from, well, he came back, we went from Alabama to California. And then to
White Sands?
then to White Sands, New Mexico.
And then did you go to France and Germany after that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We went to France first, No. We went to Germany first. We were there 4 years.
Now, had the war ended yet? The war.
Oh, yes, the war
yeah.
was over. Yes,
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we did, I think we were 3 years in Germany. I can't remember. I think we were in 3 years in Germany, and then he sent us back to the United States. We went to, I think that's when we went to California. And we hadn't been we hadn't been there that long. And I went to work out there. I got fed up with living out in the desert, temperature 300 degrees. And Michael was in school, and we lived in these prefab houses that took all of 5 minutes to clean. And anyway, I just walked down to the maintenance office. There was a Captain Butler there. I walked in, he's going to help you. And I said, I'm looking for a job. He said, what can you do? I said, I can do anything I need to. He said, you're hired.
He said, you're hired?
You're hired.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I want to ask you, what would you say is one of your biggest secrets to longevity? What do you do to keep a smile on your face? And I'm a teacher as well. And I'm an acting teacher and a life coach, and merge the two as one teaching on a weekly basis. I have 4 classes a week. And one of the things I teach my students is that when we show good stewardship in 4 key areas, those areas being in our belief system, whatever that may be, in our relationships, in the area of our body, caring for it, and the last one is our finances. If we care for and we treat respectfully the things we believe in, we care for our relationships, we care for our body, and we care for our finances, then we'll find a way to do pretty well in life. And I'm wondering what recommendations you have, because some of us kids who are here at 61 and 52, I'm 61, Ken is 52, he and I forget things far more than you have forgotten what you were going to say, far more. So what is your secret, Kate?
Well, I don't, insofar as remembering, I don't really know. I mean, I've just always been able to do that, even as a kid. I remember being commended by my reading teacher. She told the other class, what kind of read like Kathleen? And remember the stories. But I just had a good memory.
Mm-hmm. What do you do to keep a smile on your face?
Pardon?
What have you done throughout your life to keep a smile on your face? What brings you joy?
Life itself.
Beautiful.
My family. Being alive, being able to worship the Lord, go to church, be able to get up in the morning and face the day without worrying about it.
Wow.
And strangely enough, I was a strict disciplinarian in the school, in class. And I taught only in private schools. I would not teach in public schools. There wouldn't be enough money for me, because I don't like having to discipline, especially other people's children. But I mean, I'm not saying I didn't have any kids that were behavior problems, but I always taught in private school, and one of the things that made me make up my mind, Bill and I tried to get into business and lost practically all the money we had. So I had to go to work. And I just made up my mind that, I would have to do it. And I went and did it, and I got a job. I went back, to teaching. And I just made up my mind that I was just going to be the best possible teacher I could be, and that I would not let children in the classroom run over me like some teachers do. That's one reason I taught in private school too, because in private school you don't have the problems that you do in the public schools. When a parent is paying for their child to go to school, they don't want to get notes home or calls saying that Joe did this or Mary said that, which was against the rules. And so I never had any discipline problems.
Wow.
Also, the way I handle discipline, I had a couple of teachers tell me one day, come and ask me at lunchtime, you make a joke out of things that we wouldn't make a joke out of. And I said, well, strangely enough, humor works wonders. Sometimes when kids did something that wasn't quite appropriate, I just had that natural affinity to say something, turn it into something funny. And the kids would laugh and I would laugh, and then it would all be over.
The world would be a much better place, my love, if everyone had a well-developed sense of humor.
Oh, I know.
Amen.
Well, Irish, that's one thing the Irish are noted for. And I did. I had one kid, boy, had size 13 feet. And the teachers were always complaining that his feet were stuck out in the aisle, and they almost tripped over them. And one day, I didn't notice. Anyway, I think we had changed some of the kids around in the classroom for some reason. But anyway, he had his feet sticking out in the front. And I turned around to him and I said, Johnny, you need to get those big Todd hoppers of yours out of the way, or somebody's going to wind up with a broken neck today. And the whole class started laughing, and he never put his feet out like that again.
So I have another question for you. As human beings, what do you think is one of the, I was going to say dumbest, what do you think one of the worst things we do to ourselves, or the way we act in the world? What is one of the biggest mistakes we make? That's how I'll word it. What is one of the biggest mistakes we make as human beings?
Gosh, that's hard. I don't know, because
She's like, there's so many.
Other than deciding to do a weekly sex education talk show with your buddy Ken, my buddy right here. But since we've already made that bad decision, are there any other bad decisions we want to be careful about?
Well, I think overloading, I think punishment for children in the classroom has to be administered differently than it would if you were home and it was your child. Because, their mother has the right to hit you and what have you. But I think one of the strangest things that I've discovered, if you can add humor when you do make the correction, or, to make something right. Humor seems to unlock the door. And if you get them laughing, like I never hung over, I was one person, I didn't send people to the principal's office. I handled it myself in the classroom and usually in front of the class. And I had a good sense of humor, and I used humor a lot.
So it sounds like maybe
ridicule them in a little way.
it sounds like maybe not laughing would be one of the biggest mistakes we could make.
I think so. I mean, I used to have my kids laugh a lot because I'd say funny things, and I used to tell them things about English language was different. I remember one day the class was very stiff and they were upset. Something, they lost the game or something. I don't remember. Anyway, I know what it was. One of the kids used the word fag, and I started laughing, and I said, "You know what that word means in England?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, it means a cigarette. You say to your best friend, 'Have you got a fag?' Well, anybody got a spare fag?" Well, they thought that was absolutely hilarious. And they went all the rest of the day around the school calling everybody a fag. And the teachers, my principal.
And
said,
you
and
you wondered why they were calling each other a cigarette butt.
That's exactly. Yeah, they were calling each other cigarettes. Yeah. It lasted that day, but it disappeared. But they didn't forget it though.
Catherine, we've got just a few more minutes before we have to wrap up. So do you have time to maybe answer a couple of questions from our audience?
Yes.
We have a lot of people watching you, and a lot more.
Oh, really?
A lot of people, and a lot more that will be watching over the next couple of weeks, because this interview will remain posted where people can access it for quite a while. Ken, do you have something that you want to ask, and we'll open it up to our viewers?
First, I want to know, how many kids do you have?
I had 3 children.
Okay.
A boy, another boy, and Colleen. And we lost the second son when he was 32 years old.
Oh, wow. Well, I know Colleen very well, and you've done a really, really fine job raising her.
Thank you.
You got a good kid there. So,
I'm sorry for the loss of your
Yes.
son.
Well, that's something really that you never get over. It's always there in the back of your mind and in the front of your heart.
Wow.
My mother also lost her son, which was my older brother. There were only 2 of us, and she lost him last year. So I connect with the pain that a mother feels, and I'm truly, truly sorry. We are sorry for your loss. Ken, you had something otherwise.
I think people want to know the biggest secret to. I mean, 98. That's a lot of years on this planet.
Yes, I have a lot of memories.
Yeah. What do you feel is the biggest secret? What's the secret to longevity?
I don't really know, quite truthfully. I've never thought about it. I mean, my father was only 79. My mother was in her 80s. I can't remember. And the only sister that I have a niece that might remember, but you know, I don't know. I thought my dad would have lived longer, but my father's his health got really bad. He had diabetes, and it got sort of untreatable. Had he been alive today, I think he would have lived on, because they have medication today and ways of really helping diabetes.
If I don't ask you this, I'm going to regret it. So I'm going to ask you, have you ever had a Whataburger?
Have I ever? Yes, I have.
Okay. Because I know that's part of the secret of longevity.
It may be. Yeah, but I think not eating Whataburgers gives you more longevity.
Yeah, but you got to sneak one in from time to time, right?
Yeah, I think so
Every
too.
so often.
So I have a question. What is looking back over your life? What is your biggest regret?
I don't know that I've got any real regrets. Nothing that.
And that's
maybe that I didn't get to travel more than we did, because we did a lot of traveling, but there's so many places that I didn't get to see that I always hoped I would. But I really think that's about the only thing.
Wow. And you did a lot of traveling.
Yes.
You did a lot of traveling.
Yeah, we went to the World's Fair in Brussels.
Wow.
When it was there.
Mhm.
Been to Lourdes. Been to the Vatican. Had an audience with Pope Pius XI. So those are things that not everybody gets to do.
Yeah, no. Very, very, very few people, Kate. Right. And Nate Martin said, Ken's going to ask, are you going to write a book? Gosh,
I'm trying to write a book, but I'm trying to write my biography, but I'm not doing too well with it.
Well, it sounds like you're pretty good friends with the author.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, you are a dear for doing our show. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm really happy that I got to do it, and I thank you for asking me.
You know, I even think you're welcome, and I think that you've sort of indirectly revealed what the secret is, and we sort of came in the back door with it, which is perhaps the secret, my dear, to longevity is the absence of regret. You know, you really had to think long and hard about regrets, and most people off the top of their head would have a parade of regrets, and you really had to think about them. And I think that's probably evidence of peace of mind. I'll bet you've got a lot of peace of mind in your life, and that's beautiful. And I just want to send you some love for that, because you're an inspiration to all of us.
Well, thank you.
Wow. That's
and
beautiful.
maybe we've added a second. What's that?
Thank you so much for having her on the show. It's going to be a legendary memory for me, you know?
Yeah, well, she's been an incredible guest, Kate. We've really enjoyed having you.
Yes.
You should ask her the question about fear. What?
Oh, yes, I will. Kate, what do you think? And fear is the number one answer, by the way. So Colleen just gave that away. So you have to come up with a different answer for this question. What is the number one thing that holds people back from true happiness and success in life? In your opinion?
I think sometimes it's wanting too much instead of accepting and be grateful for what we have. We get all bent out of shape and, create a vein in you that, is never satisfied because you haven't fulfilled that one thing. And you have to, my feeling would be, if you have regrets, you need to sit down and look at the things that you did get and ask yourself, is there a reason I didn't get the regrets? Maybe that wasn't what was intended. The Lord didn't want me to have that. Or in my own way, I've turned away from that.
Wow.
So I have one last question for me, and it's a serious question, and I want you to take a moment and just consider. But right now, from age 98, mile marker 98, if you were to look back and talk to a much younger Kate, I'm talking about you talking with you. If from this mile marker of your life, you could look backward in time and talk to a much younger you who was handling the most troubling period of her life, what would this version of you say to her about what you know to be true now that you've lived such a long and diverse life? What would you tell the younger version of you? What advice would you give yourself?
To have faith in God, because He's your destiny, and to just pray that what you want and that have not been able to get is a reason. God has a reason that you haven't done that, because there's probably something far, far better or far, far more valuable than what you are wishing for.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
That is absolutely beautiful.
You have blessed us, beautiful gal. You have blessed us with the gift of your presence, with the gift of your love, with the gift of your sharpness, and with the gift of your storytelling abilities, because your stories are amazing. And a lot of people have trouble remembering them by the years. You were able to peel them off by the days. Let's see, on Tuesday, October 19th of 1943, I remember I was wearing a blue shirt that morning. I mean, you were incredible. You are my hero, Kate.
Oh, yes. You're
Well,
amazing.
thank you. And
You're
I bless
amazing.
you both.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. You've
Come
blessed
back and
all of
see
us.
us sometime. We have to wrap up, but Colleen, we're grateful for
Thank
time
you so
with
much.
your mama.
Colleen, thank you. We
Thank
love you
guys.
both.
Love you all. Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless
God
you,
bless
dear.
you
Much,
too.
much love. You guys have a
Thank you,
beautiful
guys.
evening. We'll do this again.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who shared this out. Glenn, thank you. And
Oh, brother, was that some sort of powerful or what?
oh my gosh. I I don't think I've ever done a show where I had a lump in my throat the entire time.
Right. Or where you said less.
Oh.
There wasn't really much to say. I mean, I said a few things, but she just took the reins and galloped
was
through
amazing.
the interview, and it was beautiful. And I think that if anyone ever wonders whether there is a correlation between who we are today and who we become,
Yeah.
I think she eliminated that doubt, because
Amen.
she clearly clearly had ideas along the way that connected with her own future. And what she said about looking back to talk to the much younger version of herself, I mean, come on. That's stuff I will be rewinding. This is material that I will be showing to my students in class. Yeah. It's just divine.
Dude, it's got, it just has me choked up, man.
Well,
absolutely amazing.
All I can say is, Kate, my love, thank you for letting a couple of young cats chat you up.
And thank you to everybody who shared this out. Glenn, hang on for a minute. I'm going to end this now, but thank you to everybody. Much love to you, Kate and Colleen. And wow, dude, thanks for hopping on here and doing this tonight.
Oh, man, I love you, and I love doing it.
Love you too, man.
Let's close with our video, brother.
All right. We'll see you guys later. Thanks so much.
We'll connect with you guys soon. All of you. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.